that you're able to join us this morning because we have a very exciting guest who's in the middle of one of the most contested, highly contested races in Tampa, Florida. We have Bill Carlson, City Councilman of Tampa, Florida.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting me today.
Woohoo! Okay, so we're gonna always start at the beginning. Where were you born?
As my brother says, I was born in Palm Beach County in a little town called Belgrade. My family's fifth generation Floridian, grown up around Lake Okeechobee, but early in my life I moved to Sebring, grew up in Sebring. Sebring is I call it a suburb of Tampa because we grew up reading the Tampa Tribune and watching this TV stations and listening to radio stations in Tampa. And we went to all the malls in Tampa to do shopping, including going to downtown Tampa to buy stuff back when there were more shops in downtown Tampa.
Well, you know what? I came here about 33 years ago, and it was still a little small townish, but I can just imagine that was like 50 years ago.
The sad thing is, remember Tampa Bay Center, University Mall, East Lake. Remember all these places we used to be able to go,
Yeah.
and they're all gone now. They're just in our memories. A lot of great restaurants that are not around anymore.
Yeah, I was around for East Lake Mall a little bit East Lake, and of course we lost the mall that's now Buccaneer Center, Tampa Bay Center. But those are, actually when I came here, Fletcher Avenue in Carrollwood was 2 lanes.
I lived in Carrollwood for a while back in the 80s. It dates me a little bit.
Okay,
But,
all right, I came in 90.
so I grew up in the greater Tampa area. I grew up in Sebring, which is kind of like being in Plant City or Brandon, but it's farther away. Great little town. And I went to University of Tampa undergrad and had a great experience there, met lots of people. And then the Rotary clubs in the area came to me and said, how would you like to apply for a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship? And it's a scholarship where they pay all expenses to go overseas for a year, and you study in a master's program, and you serve as an ambassador of the country you come from, in my case, the United States. So the idea is to build peace and goodwill and what they call pockets of peace, to build better understanding. And when I grew up, my dad had a hardware store. We didn't have a lot of money, and I'd barely been overseas before. And so I chose Singapore because it was far away. It's on the opposite side of the globe. I figured if they're going to pay me to go overseas, I want to go as far away as possible. Figure I'd never get to go back to Asia otherwise. And then also Singapore is ranked regularly the most competitive economy in the world and the best run government in the world. And so I wanted to learn about that.
Crazy Rich Asians.
It is exactly like Crazy Rich Asians. I took my my middle son 3 or 4 years ago, and on the way over, we watched Crazy Rich Asians. He said, "It's not really like that, is it?" And I said, "Yes." And when we were done, he said, "Yes, it really is like that."
Wow.
There's a lot of wealth that's built there. And so I went from studying in the MBA program, studying the Singapore model, to working as a consultant in the Singapore government and big companies like Citibank Asia and others. I worked with Singapore's airport and port, and their airline, which are the best in the world.
Well, it sounds like you stayed there more than a year.
5 years total. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I came back to Tampa, worked for the firm I'm with now, public relations firm. And the first project I worked on was promoting and redeveloping downtown St. Pete.
And the firm you're with now is?
Tucker Hall.
Tucker Hall. Okay. And I've met Mr. Hall. How did he start that firm?
Jeff Tucker started it, and then Tom Hall joined. Tom had the leading advertising agency in the region back in the 80s. I met him in a class at University of Tampa, and then he stayed in touch with me. This is pre-internet, so it was a lot harder to stay in touch. But one day, it happened to be the same day I quit my job in Singapore in 1994. He called me out of the blue and said, "We started this new company, and we're doing things like helping Tropicana go into Latin America. We're going to be advising the city of St. Pete on downtown redevelopment and all these exciting projects." So I came back, and my passion is Tampa Bay and Florida, and so I wanted to be a part of all the exciting things that are going on here.
Awesome. So, a total of how many years have you been at Tucker Hall?
since '94, so almost 30.
So you've had one career.
Yeah, so so in the '90s, as we were promoting and developing downtown St. Pete, one of the things that I saw working with former Mayor Rick Baker and others is that the arts community was bubbling up in the early to mid '90s, and so one of the things we did is to help organize a collaborative of the grassroots movement in the arts community in St. Pete to promote the arts worldwide, and we got lots of exposure all over the world for St. Pete's arts community. And they also had the Dali Museum and the Treasure of the Czars at the time. And then despite
That Dali Museum is awesome. That's a treasure.
yeah, absolutely. And despite all that, in '96, as you may remember, a black teenager was shot by a police officer, and there were 2 or 3 days of protests, and that changed the perception of St. Pete overnight. So all the positive things we'd done hurt it. And what I realized, I was in my 20s back then, but what I realized is you can't just focus on downtown, you have to focus on the entire city. Because if you
Well,
don't...
there's 2 parts of St. Pete. There's South St. Pete, and there's the beautiful part of St. Pete, which is downtown.
So I ended up going back to graduate school in '98, '99 to study everything from venture capital to race and poverty issues, to understand how we could help communities. I got a degree in public administration, came back in '99 and bought my firm. Since then, we brought in some other partners, and including the one who
So
runs
you
the firm.
bought Tucker Hall?
Yeah, I bought it in '99.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So you're the man.
Well, now we have other shareholders, including Darren Richards, who runs the company day to day while I'm at city council.
Well, that's good to have help when you're running the city government.
Also, I look at our firm as a for-profit social enterprise, and for a firm our size, we're a big PR firm, but we're a small company. For a firm our size, we're very philanthropic. We get involved in structural changes in the community, meaningful changes like turning around the airport, turning around the port,
Well,
promoting
the
downtowns.
airport is phenomenal. It's, I guess, worldwide right now. It's known as one of the best airports in the country.
So in 1972, George Bean, working with great engineers and other idea people, created Tampa Airport, and it was innovative worldwide at the time. And then he retired in '96, and the guy who took over didn't run it as well, and several of us in the community had concerns about that, and we started raising those concerns. During the next 14 years, we lost 60% of our international flights,
Oh my
and
gosh.
we had gone from being the most innovative airport in the world to not even being in the top 10 list domestically anymore. And so in 2010, board member Steve Burton and I and friend Jason Busto got together, and we created a new vision for the airport, that they would change the experience to be more up to date, go after international flights, go after more targeted domestic flights, and we pushed hard to get new management leadership at the airport. Steve was on the board, we were supporting him behind the scenes. Our firm put in $200,000 or $300,000 in pro bono time and money supporting it. We not only didn't get paid, we lost money helping to do this. But ultimately, we brought
Thank God you did, because the airport, everybody uses the airport.
Ultimately,
big community service.
Ultimately, we brought in Joe Lopano and his team because they had been very successful at Dallas-Fort Worth, and Steve and the board members at the time were the ones who voted on that. It was a really important vote to bring in somebody who knew how to grow our airport in the right way. And we gave Joe a vision outline, and he has gone way past that to do more things than we even imagined. And his team is, one of the best in the world. And he gets paid a lot, and he deserves it, because our airport has moved back up the domestic, and I think is moving up the international list again.
Absolutely. And now the new section is open now, or it's going to be open?
There are some new sections that are open, but they're going to be working on a new terminal because we're expanding. The airport is expanding. I'm not involved in the airport anymore, except to be a cheerleader on the outside.
Okay.
The board has done a great job of leading and managing it. If you ever leave Airside F, which is the international terminal, on the way out you will see a plaque that's next to the travelators that has Steve Burton's picture, and he passed away, unfortunately, a year or two after we changed management, but he really set the foundation for what has happened in the airport over the last 12 years, and he deserves a lot of credit. And one of the best things is to see his sons go through there and take pictures with their dad at the airport, and I make sure to point out to my kids all the time that of the leadership he showed in helping turn the airport around.
Well, you know, it's always good when you tell people who was really responsible for the good things that happened.
Jason and I had the ideas, but Steve was the one who had the political clout to be able to make the changes. Without him, we never would have gotten it. By the way, Joe Diaco was also on the board. He's the former Bucks doctor, but he fully supported us as well. Both were gubernatorial appointees, and Joe just passed away recently, but people know him as the Bucks doctor. But had he not supported the new vision for the airport, we would still be where we were before. And what I tell people is that had we not changed in 2010, Tampa Airport would have become to Orlando what St. Pete Airport is to Tampa.
Oh, I see.
Our airport we were losing most of our international flights to Orlando. And just to give you an idea, Orlando had 8 marketing people, and we had a half a marketing person. And now that's completely changed because our airport is more aggressive. You can't just have low fees and expect airlines to come. You have to show them that there's a demand in the market.
Wow. And you know, I can't imagine driving to Orlando to get on a plane, so thank you for all you, and for, you know, I'm sorry those people aren't alive to get their, you know, just rewards, but,
Somebody who is alive is Norma Bean, who is the widow of George Bean, and 4 years ago, she did an ad for me where she talked about all this, and it was a real honor to have a person who is essentially airport royalty talk
I know
about
that name, Norma Bean. What was she famous for?
She's done a lot of things philanthropically, been very involved in the community. She's had some health issues in the last couple of years, but she's still strong, and talk to her regularly.
And she's
Just
still
a
around.
great
Okay.
person. Yeah, and she wants to make sure that we keep the memory of George Bean alive, because he really was an innovative person. He came up with ideas, working with great engineers and construction people. He came up with ideas that other people in the world had never thought about before. You know, what they called the horizontal elevator was really an innovation here at our airport, and now almost every airport in the world has it.
The horizontal.
It's the travelators, the trains that you go in. So you go to the landside terminal, and then you go to the airside terminal. You take the little train.
Oh, we just call them trams.
Yeah, so back then, to try to explain to people what it was, because it was new, they called it horizontal elevator.
Oh, well, you know, Tampa Airport is famous for those trams. They move the people back and forth from the air sides very effectively.
Yeah, think about, or people go through Orlando Airport. When Disney opened in 1971, we were the first real airport for Disney. And one of the things we said to Joe and his team is, now that everybody's going to Orlando, go to Disney, and then they come to the beaches, why can't they come to the beaches and then go to Orlando? And
I like that idea.
that's what his team has done.
Well, you know what, when we come back, we're going to talk about some other things you're involved in, like Cafe Fun Tampa. And if you have not been, we definitely want to invite you to come down there, because the movers and shakers are going through there every Friday morning.
Yep.
What time does it start?
It's 8 to 9.
It's
Friday
8 to
mornings.
9. So we're going to talk more about Cafe Con Tampa, why you started it, and why people ought to support it.
Great.
Okay. We'll be back in a minute.
Very good. Excellent.
I was hearing an echo, so I took these off.
I know. We're hearing an echo.
You
What's
hear?
going
You still hear? Okay.
If I'm okay like this, I won't wear it.
No, don't wear it, cause pass it. Give it to me. Pass it underneath, cause I
I
need to
got
hear
it too.
I need to hear that echo.
Okay.
We made some changes last night. I mean, not last night, the other day, and we've been working through them. Okay. Good.
My sound okay?
You've been here before.
Yes, he has.
Yeah. I remember. You're a talker. Good
I'm a
talker.
talker.
Yeah. You've got a lot of good
So you
information.
see, we get a little. If you look a little bit towards that
Well,
way.
well, here's the thing. I'd rather you, if you're going to look, make the point, and then come back to her.
Okay.
If it's something that you really want to make a point on, other than that, don't worry about it, because
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, I
it's
got
not working for you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
But you can kind of monitor yourself on
Yeah,
here.
okay.
The second camera isn't working. It's got a lot
I
of
hate
things
that
going on.
camera.
So it's okay. We'll get
Thank
through
you.
it. We need the audio more important than anything else. Didn't you used to work for Vinick?
No,
No? Okay. That was
He has
another
his own
guy.
firm.
What's the firm? I didn't catch the name.
Tucker Hall.
Tucker Hall. Oh yeah. I remember. I remember. All right. 10 seconds.
All right. I am so glad you decided to join us for Tampa Bay Politics because we have Mr. Carlson, Bill Carlson. He's sitting on the Tampa City Council right now, and he is in the middle of a hot race against Mr. Casper, who owned like 60 McDonald's, sold them. Now he's like a billionaire. And for some reason, he thinks he wants to be on the city council. But the first thing I want to talk about is something that you do every Friday morning consistently, which is Cafe Con Tampa. So where do they meet?
Yeah, ironically, we meet at Oxford Exchange,
Which is owned by Mr. Casper. Okay.
Yeah, Cafe Con Tampa started as a group of neighborhood leaders in Hyde Park, and we noticed that as we were having success as a neighborhood group with advocacy, other neighborhood groups started coming, and then other community leaders started coming, and so we changed the name years ago to, it used to be called something longer, but we changed the name to Cafe Con Tampa, and anybody's interested, go to cafecontampa.com, or you go to our YouTube page and look at some of the videos of what we've done in the past. But the idea is that it's an open source civic organization. So everybody is invited to come. Please join us any Friday. You don't have to buy a ticket in advance. You can show up and pay at the door.
It's about $12.
It's $12.
And you get breakfast.
And if you can't afford the $12, send us an email with the headline scholarship. No questions asked, we'll let you in free. We just do it on the honor system because we want everybody to feel welcome. The idea is that you don't have to pay thousands of dollars and be a member of something to get access to great speakers. Like I mentioned the airport before, we've had Joe Lopano speak, we've had other political leaders and community leaders.
The president of HCC, president of NAACP, Pat Kemp, Hillsborough County Commissioner. These are just a few of the people I've seen.
And the good thing is because there's not a membership, you can come anytime you want. So if you like one speaker, then you can come that week, and you can skip the next week if you don't like the speaker. But the idea is if we can provide information in the community and provide connectivity in the community, we do 30-second announcements at the beginning. And the real value of Cafe Con Tampa is that people meet each other. So we've got a lot of new people moving to the area that may not know how to get plugged in. And instead of them spending a year searching for nonprofits they can get involved in, they can come to Cafe Con Tampa and meet them. And so we help accelerate the connectivity in the community so that we can get volunteers to help the community faster.
Who are you going to have this Friday?
We have Bob Miles, who is an expert on Warren Buffett. He's going to be talking about Warren Buffett's partner and some of his business partners, some of his philosophies on business.
Okay.
So it's a business-oriented one this week.
Okay. Well, I want to tell you that if you haven't been to Cafe Con Tampa, you need to get yourself down there. I know it's early in the morning, but once you're there, you're going to be so excited that you actually made the trip.
And that's sponsored by my PR firm, Tucker Hall. It doesn't have anything to do with my city seat. It's just a way of connecting with the community. We've also started a couple other nonprofits, or more nonprofit, another group, the Tampa Arts Alliance. Tucker Hall started with the Gobioff Foundation, Neil Gobioff and Michelle Smith. Michelle is now the executive director of it. And the idea is to do the same thing we did in St. Pete the last 20 years, which is to build a grassroots arts movement in Tampa.
Really?
Back in the 90s, a lot of artists left Tampa, and some of them went to St. Pete, some went other places. Now we're trying to provide connectivity and build collegiality among the artists in Tampa to grow the arts community, because we know that arts is essential for the future of the economy. And then in Ybor, my day job.
Well, let me ask you one
Sure.
question when you say the arts, because I'm actually a singer, and related to one of the Supremes by marriage. So, are you talking music? Are you talking painting?
It's all kinds of arts.
Okay.
All kinds of arts. And we held a series of town hall meetings to talk to people about what arts availabilities there are out there. And there's all kinds of different grassroots groups that support different kinds of artists. and we're trying to bring it together, provide some connectivity. We're going to be embarking on a survey so that we can map out where the artists are and what they're doing, what their genres are, so we can figure out exactly what we need to do. But in Ybor, my day job office is in Ybor, and the Ybor used to be the center of the arts community in Tampa, and now there's some big investments being made in Ybor, and we've formed an ad hoc group called the Ybor City Ad Hoc Arts Group. It's not part of the Arts Alliance because the Arts Alliance needs to be citywide, but now we have, like, Amanda Poss from HCC and I started this group 6 months ago, just the two of us, and we said, why don't we invite other people? Last meeting we had 30 people meeting at the high. If you're interested in it, email me, and I'm happy to plug in. Everything I do is about breaking down barriers, breaking down walls, building community.
So this group is going to have performances or set up performances?
This group is just people interested in the arts community, from developers to artists and gallery owners, discussing how to grow the arts in Ybor. So one of the first things we did is we set up the first Ybor Art Walk, which was extremely successful. Right now we're trying to support the efforts.
And what is an art walk?
Art Walk is where you have like 10 places in Ybor that have the arts, and you have like a cocktail hour where people walk to the different galleries and learn about the arts in Ybor.
Oh, that sounds fun.
So it changes the experience and perception people have of Ybor, because Ybor is going back to being a community now. It's going to be less of a nightclub district, and it'll be a place where people will be living and working and still have entertainment, but the arts will be.
Well, you know, I would say that there's been a lot of black people that have been living there for a long time, but I don't know if they've really felt a part of that Ybor nightlife.
Yeah, like I was saying a minute ago, all the groups that I have, these 3 groups, they're all open to everybody, and we've been reaching out to the folks in East Tampa. You know, there's a crossover between Ybor, North Ybor, and East Tampa, and so we're trying to engage as many folks as we can. So if there are any artists listening that are in the Ybor City area, even if you're in the southern part of East Tampa, please join us. We meet, I think, the last Wednesday of every month, 8 a.m. again. I drop off my kids at 7:30, so I start at 8.
So you're free from 8 o'clock on.
But we're making it open source because there have been too many barriers in Tampa in the past, and the way our community becomes successful is we tear down those barriers. Let's tear down the hierarchies and make it open to everybody. Of course, the people who control the hierarchies don't like that, and they try to fight back, but there aren't that many of them left anymore. And you know, the hierarchical structure is a remnant of the 80s and before, and the communities that are successful don't have that anymore. They include everybody, and that's what we need to do. We need to make sure everybody is welcome, everybody is a part of the conversation.
Diversity is our strength, and we want to make everybody feel included. I agree with that. Now, I just want you to know, everybody doesn't have time to figure out what the city council does, who's on the city council. Can you help us out? How many seats are there?
We have 7 seats on city council. There's a representative for each district, which is north, south, east, and west. And then we have 3 that are citywide. So wherever you are, you can vote for your local district representative, but you can also vote for 3 citywide. So everybody has 4 representatives.
All right, let's go over our citywide seats. Who's in there now?
Charlie Miranda, Lynn Hertak, and Joe Citro.
Okay, so I know that Lynn Hertak has a very contested race as well, because Janet Cruz, who happens to be the mother-in-law to the mayor, has decided to take out Hertak.
Yeah, and let's back up a second. Before that, we had John Dingfelder, who was elected by the public, and he was beloved by the neighborhoods.
History.
And
yes.
Because he was so pro-neighborhood, there was a lawsuit against him, and to a certain
by
extent,
a developer.
To a large extent, the administration worked to get him out.
The mayor.
And so he's not in office anymore, and we had to replace him. There was an effort by
so Mr. Dingfelder basically said, I don't have the resources to fight this kind of litigation, and he resigned.
Yeah, so he resigned as part of a settlement agreement with the people who sued him. And the private sector stuff, if private sector is involved in lawsuits, that's up to them. But what embarrasses me is that city dollars were used and city staff were used to attack him, and that's wrong. There's, by charter, a separation of powers, and one branch of government should not be attacking the other. They did the same thing with Goods. however you feel about the allegations against him, the city should treat everybody fairly, and they should not spend extraordinary resource to target one person because they don't like that person.
Okay, so Orlando Goods is one of the single member districts.
He represents East Tampa.
He's now in the seat representing East Tampa. And oddly enough, he was accused of sexual harassment by one of his employees, and now her sister is running against him. Very odd, very odd.
Yeah,
But-
there's a lot. We could talk at length about this, but I'll just say this part. For 7 days, the administration pushed out negative information about Orlando, and it just happened to be leading up to the day before we were voting for the person to replace Dingfelder, and so the administration had their candidate they were pushing, had Orlando resign just before that. The administration's appointee would have been in there. Instead, city council's appointee was there, which is Hurtak, and now they're targeting her with an opponent. And if you look at the allegations against Goods, if he said what is claimed that he said, it's disgusting. He shouldn't have done that. He claims that he didn't. There was no lawsuit filed against the city, but there was a settlement. It's been litigated in the courts twice. The courts have thrown it out in his favor.
Really?
And the last time with prejudice for 2 of the 3 charges. So we'll see. I think there's going to be another appeal, but we'll see what that is. But there were 2 different legal investigations that were conducted by the city. One cost $100,000, and apparently the city was not happy with that, so they hired another lawyer who claimed that it was something that any other lawyer says it was not. And I'll stop there, but it's odd that the city would spend more than $100,000 investigating someone when there are complaints like this all the time that are handled quietly. And if everything that is alleged against him was true, then the question is, why would the mayor and the administration embarrass the claimant who made the claims against him? Why would you publicize it and push it out in the media? We were all friends with that person, and it's not fair to that person or that person's family to push these out into the public. You should, in a case like that, you should try to protect the person who is innocent in this and protect their identity. You shouldn't send out information that identifies who that person is. In fact, it's a misdemeanor to do that. And the mayor's office sent out information that identified the title and the gender of the person, which I think was wrong. Instead, they should have protected that person.
Well, thank God Mr. Goods is still there, and he is running. And hopefully he'll be reelected.
Yeah, he works hard for East Tampa and works hard for the city. And
People love him.
He supports me in South Tampa, and I support him in East Tampa. We've made a lot of investments in East Tampa, but sometimes when I show up in East Tampa, people say, "Why are you here?" And
Because you represent South Tampa.
because we have to vote for issues citywide. I vote on issues with East Tampa all the time. I need to understand it. If I've never been to the places that we're talking about, if I've never been to Fair Oaks Community Center, how would I know that it needs to have heavy investment to replace it? The same thing though, he's come to South Tampa and looked at our facilities. And I want him to know about South Tampa because I need him to vote with me on issues for South Tampa, and he has.
Well, a lot of people don't understand that once you're on that board, your vote counts. Whatever issue, if it's a citywide issue, if it's in one part of the city, that vote counts equally.
And you need 4 votes to get anything done, or if the mayor is against it, you need 5 votes. So it's really important as folks are looking at this election, do you want, if you believe in separation of powers, that the legislative branch and the executive branch should be separated and they should balance each other out, then you should vote for people who are independent thinking and will be watchdogs. If you want the city council to do whatever the mayor wants, then vote for the people who will be rubber stamped for the mayor.
And that's a very important point you're bringing up, because the mayor is basically in for another term. So you have the opportunity to let your voice be known as to who you want on the city council, because they're a check and balance.
Yeah, and it could be that, depending on how the election goes, it could be that the mayor will have 5 or 6 solid votes, or it could be that the public will have 5 or 6 solid votes. And so it depends on what your point of view. If you think that mayor's 100% right and you agree with things like toilet and tap, then vote for the people who will rubber stamp whatever the mayor wants. Even if you like the mayor, though, you should want some kind of watchdog to look at the numbers and ask questions. And asking questions should not be a problem. It should not cause conflict. Unfortunately, it has.
Well, I agree. And when we come back, we got some issues on the table that are affecting Tampa we want to talk about. Alrighty then.
Are we going in okay direction?
Huh?
Are we going in okay direction?
Yes, you are.
Oh, it's good. It's very good.
He has to just make sure he doesn't say anything that they can pick up and use against him, because Mr. Casper is loaded. There won't really be a mayoral race, but there'll be a city council race on March the 7th.
Yeah, there's a write-in candidate for mayor, Dr. Belinda Noah, and
That
you
doesn't count.
you can write
That
in the
doesn't
name.
count. No, we pretty much are gonna have the same mayor. Yeah. So I have with me Mr. Bill Carson, who is sitting on City Tampa Council right now, and in a race of his life against Mr. Casper, who owns 60 McDonald's.
He used to own 60.
Used to own them, sold them, so he's only worth about $300 million right now, and he's focusing a lot of it on you.
What I tell people is if I win, then I'll continue to be a watchdog for the public. If I lose, then I'll get the satisfaction of watching him suffer through land use hearings at 11 o'clock at night on Thursdays. It's difficult sitting through those land use meetings, but if I had $350 million, I don't think I would do that. I think I would.
Not unless
I would get involved.
someone encouraged you to do that.
I would get involved in advocacy in another way. I wouldn't do it in that area. But I love representing the public, and I love representing the public's interests. I think the public needs a voice in the city, and city council members are the direct connection that the public has to
You
the
are
city.
our voice. You're the voice of the people.
Right.
Yes.
We're literally the representatives. So if you have a broken sidewalk, you contact us to get that fixed. But if you want policy change, you need to get that as well. And if the public disagrees with the mayor, we can be the check for the mayor. If the public doesn't like city council, they can have the mayor be a check on city council. That's the way the charter's written, and that's the way American government is set up.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about affordable housing because that is a huge issue. Are you seeing any headway on that at all?
There's no way that the city or the county can solve the problem in the short term. The Housing Authority says there's an official list of 25,000 people waiting for affordable housing, but that there are a lot of people that have given up and dropped off the list, so the real number is about 50,000. The mayor has a goal to hit 10,000 within 8 years. A lot of it is counting old projects and counting things that don't really count as affordable housing, like workforce housing or senior housing isn't necessarily affordable housing. There's a lot of definitions in there, but there's no way we could possibly build 50,000 homes. We've got to take limited public dollars and leverage them with the private sectors, nonprofits like Habitat, CDC, and others, the for-profits. We've got to leverage those dollars because we can't possibly build fast enough and we don't have enough money to build the number we need. This year, I made a motion to put 30% of the CRA money, there are 8 CRA districts, community redevelopment areas, 30% of the CRA money into a housing fund, and that will generate about, my colleagues approved it, so that'll generate about $22 million in money. CRA is completely governed by the city council sitting as a CRA board. And then one of my colleagues made a motion to spend about $20 million more on affordable housing from the city side. So together that's a little over $40 million, about $42 million. And then the mayor proposed another $14 million, so the total is about $56 million. That's
Now,
fine.
do you have land? Is there space to build?
Well, that could be just subsidizing, helping people buy first-time homes or helping to subsidize homes. We also put in a fund for rental reimbursement to help people with the skyrocketing rent increases in the last couple of years.
Keeping people housed because we just don't want people being evicted.
Yeah, and there is land, and another one of my colleagues, I think it was Goods, one of my colleagues made the motion to look at the available land and figure out if we could convert it to housing.
Yes.
So there are a lot of creative ideas going on out there because land will only get to be more and more valuable in the future. One of the ideas is to create a community land trust, which we're looking at doing with the CRA and the city. And that would be similar to Singapore and other places where a nonprofit would own the land, which would bring the price of the house down, and then they would lease it in 99-year leases. So you could still buy and sell the home, but it would be subject to a 99-year lease that toward the end of it, probably there would be some renewal agreement. But that way, the city could help guarantee that the house would remain affordable.
Yes.
Because what happens is if you work with the private sector and you have 10 or 30-year affordable housing, then after that it can go up to market rate, and then we're out of land, and so this is a longer-term solution.
How do you feel about rent control?
Rent control essentially is illegal in Florida. Years ago, I don't remember, 20, 30 years ago, the state passed a law that said that you can't do it unless you hit a bunch of hurdles, which essentially makes it impossible to do. Orlando.
Well, if we have to talk to the state about it, Ron DeSantis is a no.
Well, if you believe in rent control, talk to your state representatives, state senators. It's the only way that you could get that done. There were a lot of people that wanted the city to do something. We decided not to because it's so risky and we would get sued. And Orlando did do that, and they're getting sued. And my argument is if we have to spend $2 or $3 million on a lawsuit, I'd rather put that into rental assistance now.
Right.
Let's help people now while we need it. The problem of rent increases is that we've had so many people move to Florida in the last 2 or 3 years because of COVID.
With money.
And because they're very wealthy, the prices have gone up to match that. And unlike a country,
And demand.
yeah, unlike a country, we can't control our borders. We also can't put new supply online that fast. Supply was slowed down because of COVID. There wasn't as much construction, and there were supply chain issues and inflation cost issues. So we're trying to look at rezoning and other issues to allow more affordable housing to be built or less expensive housing, and we're pushing to leverage public dollars, also trying to get more federal and state dollars for housing.
Now, are you working with individual companies that actually do multifamily houses like Blue Sky?
The city does that. City council does not directly work with any of them.
Okay.
We encourage them to work with everybody because we need to build 50,000 homes. So if we engage everybody and we use all the public dollars available, we still can't build 50,000 homes in the near future. So we need to find every possible resource we can to put out there.
Yeah, 50,000 is a daunting number, and it could be even higher.
And by the way, we're at 50,000 because nobody looked at that issue before. In fact, the last administration tore down affordable housing and didn't have a plan to replace it. And so when we started, about 2,000 affordable homes were destroyed. And so we're like the mayor's numbers are counting up to get to 10,000, but you really have to take 2,000 out because the last administration tore 2,000 down.
And they said that they were going to help these people who were displaced. And we don't even know where those people went to.
Yeah, there was a strategy in Tampa. I think we've stopped it now at City Council. But there is a strategy in a lot of cities to just push gentrification. And what it really is cities make money on property taxes. And
Yes,
so
that's
if
true.
you push out people who have low-cost homes and you put in high-end homes, the city makes more money. But that's where you can't look at the city as a business. You have to look at what are the numbers that you use to measure a city. And if you want to see the real numbers, go to a website I created with USF called the TampaScorecard.com. And what it shows is that where we were given a lot of hype a few years ago that Tampa is now among the great cities, all this stuff. We are a great city, but we're not even close to Charlotte, Austin, Atlanta. We're not even moving in the same direction. Their numbers are going up. I'm talking about economic numbers that economists follow. Ours are going sideways. During most of the last 10 or 12 years, the middle class in Tampa shrank and the number of people in poverty went up. What also increased was the people that made more than 200,000. The problem with this is it's not just a social issue, it's an economic development issue. Big companies, when they're looking to locate here, invest here, they look at our numbers. And when they see that the disparities between men and women and blacks and whites and home ownership rates are low, then they won't come and
Yeah,
invest
where's your
here.
employee base going to come from? Yeah, they look, and you know another thing they look at? Transportation. How long is it going to take somebody to get to work if the roads are all clogged up?
Yeah, and on the disparity issue, in 2019, in St. Pete, the disparity between blacks and whites was 15,000 a year. In Tampa, it was 21. 3 years later, it's 35 in Tampa. And if you go back
So
and
we're
look,
going absolutely in the wrong direction.
3 years ago, I proposed redoing economic development in Tampa so it would be broad-based and move the numbers. And I worked with USF to do that. Administration rejected it. So
And what would that entail?
In places like East Tampa, for example, instead of focusing on gentrification, tearing out houses and pushing people farther out, instead let's look at the support the rich history and culture of the neighborhoods, but more importantly, help people start their own businesses. 80% of jobs and wealth and jobs in America are created by small businesses, and there are people that are entrepreneurial. They just don't know how to start their small businesses. And we spend a lot of time on workforce training. All that does is it helps people earn a little bit more. What we need to be doing is helping people start their own businesses. The way you get intergenerational wealth is to start your own business and to own a house. The home ownership rate statewide is 65%. In Tampa, it's 50%, and African American is around 40%. We need to change that, and it's not just because we care about black people or Hispanic people. It's because it's also an economic development issue. If companies see that we have these disparities, they're not going to invest here. We don't know how many investments we're losing because companies see our economic data before they even look at us.
Well, I do know we lose companies to neighboring counties like Pasco.
But what happens in economic development is that it's all about jobs. It's about subsidizing jobs. It's about subsidizing this or that. And I'm against subsidies because it's against the market forces. And also it's not fair to everyone. For a small amount of money, we can help people start businesses. Why would we subsidize companies? Until I got on board, did you know that when the EDC got city or county money to fund something, they never asked them afterwards whether they hit the goals? So they say, we're bringing in 200 jobs and we're going to make a $20 million investment. They never asked them afterwards if they did that. So I passed an ordinance 2 years ago to require that anybody who gets a city subsidy has to sign an affidavit once a year saying whether they hit the goal or not. Why would we give millions of dollars to a company that we're not holding accountable for the promises they made when we gave them the subsidy? It's crazy. Instead, we could take that $2 million and we can invest it in helping people start businesses.
Well, anyone listening to this conversation, I think you should know why we need to keep Mr. Bill Carlson on the city council. I mean, you gave me the best answers on affordable housing. This is a realistic look at things that we can do to help the community.
There's so many different things we can do. We just need to look at things differently. And Tampa has what I call an edifice complex. Is that we measure results in the new buildings. And we need people who understand economics. I studied economics in undergrad and 2 different graduate schools. I worked in economic development in Singapore, which is the best at it in the world. They understand that home ownership rate is important. They understand that entrepreneurship is important. And we need to focus on those.
All right. Well, we'll be back. Because there is an election coming up March the 7th, and I have one of those people that are going to be on your ballot, and that is City Councilman Bill Carlson. All of the seats are up except for Louis Vieira, because he's already in.
Yeah, his
But-
was up, but he didn't have an opponent. So.
He didn't have
and
an
don't
opponent.
forget, March 7th is election day, but I think you can still apply for absentee ballots now, and even if you were there before, state law changed, so you have to request an absentee ballot again. But early voting starts on February 27th, and because we have such low turnout for city races, every vote counts. Every race is going to be
I think
incredibly
Louis
close.
Vieira won by 54, like 100 votes the first time.
62, I think.
62 votes we got a city councilman by
Yeah.
Louis Vieira.
So all these races will all be close. And if you care about the city, please learn as much as you can about each of the candidates, and please show up to vote. We need every single vote. Everybody who cares about the city needs to vote.
Share this
time.
program. Get it out there. Okay, let's talk about toilet to tap real quick. Hot topic.
So this is a project that's been around for a long time. We have a regional water wholesale supplier called Tampa Bay Water. It was on their short list for a long time, and it's not the cheapest, safest solution for water.
It's not safe.
So they never chose it. Last administration took it off their short list, so it wasn't considered by them. But then they tried to do it themselves. And when we started 2019, they presented to us. I made a motion to kill it. We did. At that time, it was $300 million. A year and a half later, they brought it back with a different name, this time called Pure. which is a misnomer. And they presented it to us again. We tried to kill it. They presented new excuses for why we needed it. We argued about it, and we asked them to do a full analysis of the costs. Instead of $300 million, their consultants presented on video, it was between 2.1 and 6.3 billion dollars. And if you take that out, it would probably double or triple the water rates. So even if we raise water rates by $1, there are a lot of people that can't afford the water rates now.
Much less double or triple.
Why would we do this? And so in 20 years, the city of Tampa will need 4 million gallons a day of fresh water. We can easily buy that from Tampa Bay Water. We don't have a water shortage. There's a regional 20-year plan and a 10-year supply. Tampa Bay Water is internationally known as an example of collaboration. And for disclosure, I helped create it back in 1998. But it is an international example of how governments work together. We're not like other places in the world or other places in Florida that have a water shortage. So when we killed it based on that excuse 4 years ago, then they brought it back and said, well, now we need it for minimum flows and this and that.
And let's just say the mayor is absolutely for it.
So we argued those points, and then now they're saying, well, we have to do this because the state's requiring us to do it. Well, a month ago, the mayor's staff admitted that in the Tampa Bay Times that they helped lobby in favor of it. And so the city, and it wasn't just this administration, the last administration also, they lobbied for a bill that's now going to force us to raise our rates. And so a couple weeks ago, I made a motion to ask the city to use our lobbying resources and our legal resources to stop it. And their answer was, no, we're not going to do that because we want this. And then I said, well, if you want to sell this, sell this water, why not sell it to Tampa Bay Water and have a guaranteed first right of refusal to buy a similar amount back? That way, if we had that kind of agreement, we could make a profit the next 30 years, and we would have a supply of water for the next 100 years, and we wouldn't have to burden our ratepayers. For 30 years, we could reduce our water rates, and we would not have any debt.
So where does it stand right now?
The city wants to build their own. They don't want anybody else to build it for them. They want to build their own. And nobody understands, why would you push? The last two mayors have said this is their legacy project. Of all the things that you could do as a mayor, why would you want to forcing people to pay for and drink potty water to be your legacy? It doesn't make sense.
All right,
when we
let's
don't need
move
it.
on to Hannah Avenue. What's going on there?
Hannah Avenue started as 2 buildings for $100 million. One of them was a new police headquarters. The community said they didn't want police headquarters in East Tampa, so the city said, okay, we've taken that out. And now we're only going to build the 1 building instead of 2. But now the cost has gone up. Instead of 2 buildings for $100 million, now it's 1 building for $108 million. And I said, well, how much is the interest on that? And they said $71 million. And I said, well, how much is the operation and maintenance on that? And they said, we didn't know. Because the only way you could compare it to renting would be to have those numbers. So they came back a year later, which was 2 weeks ago, and in the fine print, 8-point type, it says the cost has now gone up to $126 million.
What is going to go in the building?
And then we saw the interest, and I said, well, so that takes it up to like $190 million with interest. And I said, well, how much is the operation and maintenance of the building? And 6 months out, they said, we don't know. And so we don't have the numbers. How can city council make a decision when the staff's not giving us the numbers and they say they haven't crunched the numbers on it?
So is this project a go or not?
It's being built right now. And the worst thing was, for the $108 million building, the mayor's people pushed us hard to vote for it, said, you need to support the mayor. So we tried to be supportive of the mayor. We passed it. 2 weeks later, somebody came to public comment and said, do you realize that they didn't put it out for bid? And imagine...
But someone's going to get paid.
$126 million building, and we didn't put it out for bid. Now then they said, the legal department said, well, in 2015, we put an RFP for a $400,000 contract to build or renovate a building. And they built. Even though that contract was dormant for 3 years, they built on that. The legal advice I've gotten was that that's not the right way to do it. And so why?
So who is building this project?
There's a construction company, and they're all good people.
Is it Skanska?
No, is it DPR, I think?
Okay.
And great architects, great construction companies. And by the way, the other 2 things that came out were they were not using enough minority participation. And so good folks from TOBA and others got involved, and now they are.
Okay.
And they're also using the apprenticeship program.
Thank
So
God.
they've listened to us, but the issue is that the city didn't put it out for an RFP. What I said publicly is
All
that,
right, so how was DPR chosen?
well, they were chosen back in 2015, and the companies are all very good companies, but the question is, why did the city not put it out for bid? If you know that that the price is increasing from 400,000 to 126, any reasonable person would put it out for bid. Even if you say 5%, that's
Because
$6
they're
million.
just going buck wild crazy with the costs.
And then another one is Fair Oaks Community Center. Last administration twice rejected the idea of renovating Fair Oaks Community Center for $375,000, and so the public asked us, CRA board, City Council CRA board, to have a town hall meeting. So we did. We went there, and there were 100 people, and they said, "This place is a fire trap. There are rats in the ceiling. We want a new building." The new building was $5 million, about $4 or $5 million.
Okay.
A few months later, the administration came back and said, "We want to build a regional park, which is now $14 million." 2 weeks ago, in the fine print, we found out it's now $41 million.
Oh my gosh.
So, even if
and
you
somebody else is getting paid.
if you live in East Tampa and you love that park, imagine if we from 14 to 41 million. What is that? 27 million. Or something. Think about what we could have done with the difference. Al Barnes Park, other parks that need help. Just think about what we could have done citywide. We could have spent that money on affordable housing. And I said, "Is that money coming out of the parks budget? It's only $5 million a year." I said, "Is that coming out of the parks budget?" They said, "No, we're bonding it." Well, if you're bonding it, then you can spend it on anything. Why wouldn't we have spent that difference on affordable housing? Wouldn't that have made sense?
So they need an additional $27 million on what?
I don't know. But why? And we found out about it by accident because it was in the small print 2 weeks ago. So
Is there anything that can be done about it now?
I don't know. I don't think we've approved the final contracts. But the question is, why are we spending so much money on these projects? And even if you say, well, 41 million, East Tampa deserves it. East Tampa deserves high quality parks, yes. But think about the parks that we're not renovating because we're spending so much on one. And think
Because
about
somebody's getting paid.
think about what we could have done with affordable housing, where the roads are falling apart. In South Tampa, the roads are falling apart, the parks are falling apart. We
That's
would love
still
to have
an
that
issue, too, in
27
South
million.
Tampa.
Yeah.
The roads flood in South Tampa. Okay, let's talk about your campaign. What do you need?
Please go to billcarlson.com, and we'd love to have you involved in volunteering. We need people to knock on doors. We need people to post on social media, what candidate you're in favor of. Don't forget that you're not just voting for one. Even if you can't vote for all of us, we need at least 4 votes to make sure we have good government in Tampa. We need donations, of course, all of us. We need people to put out signs. Mine would only go in South Tampa, but if you have friends in South Tampa, please ask them to contact us to volunteer.
Is there a phone number?
The best way is just go to the website. The number's there, billcarlson.com. You can volunteer there. You can ask for signs. You can make a donation.
How are you spelling that, Carlson?
CARLSON.
We can figure out Bill.
BILLCARLSON.com.
Okay.
And if you disagree with me, let me know. If you think we should spend $41 million on Fair Oaks Community Center, email me and tell me that you think we should. Email that to my city account, bill.carlson@tampa.gov. And if you have any other constituent issues, please contact any of us and we'll be glad to help you.
All right, because remember, he is a sitting city councilman. He can help you now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Most of what we do day in and day out is helping constituents with issues related to sidewalks, potholes, trees, the issues that they're dealing with. And we try to be very responsive. I represent South Tampa. Orlando Goods represents East Tampa, Louis Vieira, North Tampa, and right now Guido, West Tampa. But you also have 3 citywide city council members. So contact us. That's what we're here for, to help you with whatever issues you have.
All right, just to let you know, Robin Lockett is going to be here next week, and she's running for city council as well. So we got a lot of candidates. I am sorry I was not able to mention all of them. No emails, please. But thank you so much for joining us. We know how busy you are. I mean, you are a servant of the people, and we appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, and thanks for all you do, too.
Thank you. All right. Share out there.